Good morning and welcome and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. We are a community of children, youth, and adults bound not by creed but by covenant. My name is Kara Andreski. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a member of the celebrant team. Our church is located on lands that are the traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa and Sac and Fox peoples. Other than those of us descended from those indigenous peoples, we are all arrived here from someplace else. As we enter this space, let us recommit to understanding the history of the land it occupies and to our owning our part in the work of education, reparation, and healing. Our speaker this morning is Heidi Levine. Heidi has been a member of First Unitarian Church of Des Moines since the fall of 2015. Heidi and Tim Wilson relocated to the Des Moines area when Heidi joined the Simpson College leadership as Vice President for Student Development. And UCDSM is the 5th UU congregation where Heidi has found a spiritual home. If you are here with children, feel free to keep them seated with you or take advantage of our We Worship space in the back of the auditorium, where you and your child may play quietly with toys and books. Please silence your cell phones during the service, and if you are joining us via Zoom, please make sure your mics are muted throughout the service. After the service at 11 a.m. in Griffith Hall, all are welcome to attend a forum inviting you into conversation about today's service theme. Our chalice lighting this morning is from Psalm 133. How rare it is, how lovely, this fellowship of those who meet together. Our gathering song is 146 in the gray hymnal, Soon the Day Will Arrive.
Take a moment to settle fully into your seat. Let your breathing soften. As you are comfortable, let your eyes gently close. From this place of stillness, let us enter into a time of meditation, reflection, or prayer. A church is not a building, but a community. As a community of human hands and human hearts, we come together to share our laughter and our tears, and to bear witness and minister to one another as we struggle with life's sorrows and celebrate life's joys. Our beloved Florence Freddy died on June 6th at 100 years old, and a memorial service for Florence will be held at First Unitarian Church on Saturday, July 8th at 11 a.m. Let us share now together the names of anyone you know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May the work of our hands and hearts support, aid, and comfort all those who hunger for or thirst for food or water, justice or freedom. May we never look away when we are needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May the broken places be healed. And may those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. We light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared aloud, one for those shared in writing, and one for those held silently among us.
The mission of the First Unitarian Church is to, can you hear me? The mission of the First Unitarian Church is to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, and love radically. There we go. Your gifts of time and presence and money make all of this possible. The offering is a budget line item. It's also a symbol of gratitude for this community and a symbol of the generosity that defines it. Every week, half of the collection given in the service goes directly to the wider community to support faith and action partners like Let's Talk, who collaborates with the Des Moines Public Schools to help young people resolve conflict, Hawthorne Hill, who works with unhoused families towards permanent affordable housing. You may give through the plate as it passes or give online. Thank you. How do you follow that up? The first reading this morning is Coming Home by Kathleen Montgomery from the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. I invented Unitarian Universalism all by myself. I know numerous other people who have done this as well. I did it on buses, traveling up and down Livernois Avenue in Detroit. I was 17 or so, a working class Irish Catholic, living with my parents and attending a Jesuit college about 10 miles away. The Jesuits would have been astonished, I suppose, to learn that this is what they had fashioned, a teenager trying to figure out what religion was and could be, and whether it was even possible to be both religious and honest, much less an actual member of an actual church. I thought not. Each day that bus went within a half mile or so of a Unitarian church, but I didn't know that, and if I had known, it wouldn't have meant a thing. A decade later, in another city, long after I had left the church, I stumbled on a passage in a book that described Unitarian Universalism. I was astonished. This thing I had invented actually existed. A richer version than mine, a version with a religious, intellectual, and cultural tradition I couldn't have imagined, but still identifiably mine. And then there was the experience so many of us have had of coming home, of showing up in this church and finding comfort and challenge and people who insisted that I grow, of finding ideas that thrilled and scared me because they demanded so much, of finding a community of scrappy, smart, satisfying people who cared passionately about the church, about Unitarian Universalism, and about leaving the planet a better place. People who believe that they need one another for religious and social reasons and for the work of making justice. Unitarian Universalists come from so many places. Many paths are traveled on the way to Unitarian Universalism. But what about the folks who don't even know this faith exists, who have some sense of what they wish existed but can't imagine that it does? The kids or young adults or retired people on a bus somewhere in some city, longing for something that could be right around the corner or down a street from where they are. What about those people? This is what I have learned. For each time I don't reach out to someone who might join this faith, for each time I hesitate to be hospitable out of shyness or solipsism, I may be leaving someone's life poorer than it might be. If there's a teenager on a bus somewhere, and there is, I'd like to offer her the good news of Unitarian Universalism.
Sure. Just for a little Father's Day context, this song was written about this guy when he was born, so. Coming off 9 hard months on the inside. Ain't no sense in crying, crack a bottle, let it ride. Spent your whole life waiting, now you have arrived. Got me contemplating what it means to be alive. Got it all together, liking where I'm at. Gonna take you down now, gonna take you to the mats. Louis Royal, Louis Royal, Louis Royal, Louis Royal. Coming off 9 hard months on the inside. Ain't no sense in crying, crack a bottle, let it ride. Spent your whole life waiting, now you have arrived. Got me contemplating what it means to be alive. Louis Royal, if only this one time things could be just fine. If you embrace those ties that bind you, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba, ooh, ooh, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba, ooh, ooh. All you got to do is keep on being Louis, you, Lou. When I disappoint you, you still love me, won't you, you, Lou.
All right, our second reading this morning is Growing, Serving, Loving, a series of lay-led services reflecting on our lives in community by Reverend Victoria Safford. As individuals and as a gathered community, our mission at First Unitarian Church is to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, love radically. Each of us comes to this mission in our own way, with our own history, our own hopes, our strengths, and our needs. As the community changes, grows, and deepens, so do we all. We change and we are changed by this church in countless ways. As we prepare for a new 2-year partnership with an interim minister, our church is in a time of transition on the threshold between no longer and not yet. This is hopeful, but challenging, a time when we need each other and each other's stories more than ever, as together we find the words, the intentions, and the practices that best define our beautiful community. What matters to us now? what work lies ahead. Change is the only constant in our personal lives, in the world around us, and in our congregation. What anchors us and gives us hope and courage for the next step and the next.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Hearing this prayer, which declares that there is only one God, strongly evokes for me a sense of connection to my Jewish ancestry and religious roots, which is not to say that my childhood experience was one of deep religious practice or grounding. Far from it. My parents were both first-generation Americans, born to parents who had emigrated to the US in the 19-teens from Eastern Europe. While my father's parents, the only grandparents I knew, kept a kosher home, neither my parents nor my aunts and uncles did. And I have to admit, my memories of my grandma include how much she loved eating bacon when she visited us. My childhood experience was not too dissimilar from those of many of my schoolmates in the heavily Jewish Chicago suburb in which I grew up. We lived a religiously secular life with attendance at religious services pretty much confined to attending the bar mitzvah ceremonies of boy cousins and family friends. This was in the years before girls becoming bat mitzvah became commonplace. And my mother faithfully attending the memorial Yizkor portion of the Yom Kippur service each fall. We stopped short of having Christmas trees, but we did exchange gifts on Christmas morning rather than during Hanukkah because my father had Christmas Day off from work. But my bacon-eating, non-religious family was most definitely Jewish. Some of that was reflected in the more traditionally Jewish foods we loved, and the sounds of my grandparents and mother speaking Yiddish, mainly when they didn't want us kids to know what they were talking about. My parents were both active in B'nai B'rith, a Jewish service organization, and I loved celebrating the high holy days and Passover with extended family. The sounds of the Shema being chanted, thank you, Sarah. Singing that our first hymn, which I first knew as the Israeli folk tune Bashana Haba'ah, reciting the ancient Aramaic prayer for the dead, which extols God, joining in a joyous hora or other celebration, all connect me with a deep sense of myself and my history. And still, I was left with big questions and the desire for something more. I remember being a high school senior and in my English class reading the book of Job alongside Archibald MacLeish's play and verse J.B. In addition to analyzing, as much as high school seniors can, the ways in which the modern work built on ancient themes, I particularly remember writing an essay on the quote, "If God is God, he is not good. If God is good, he is not God." How I struggled with that quote. I was not sure I really believed in God, at least not in the idea of an omniscient deity. But I believed, or at least wanted to believe, that there was something more, some inherent goodness or benevolence in the universe. I wanted a way of understanding my life and faith that went deeper than a love of gefilte fish and matzo balls. Early in my time in college, I attended a few Friday night gatherings at our campus Hillel. I hoped to find there a place where I could connect with other students who seemed like me, and a place where I could explore what it might mean to be a Jew. But I didn't really fit there. These weren't like the other assimilated Jewish friends of my childhood. These were people who had a practice of Judaism which went beyond my cultural touch points. And the fact was, the deeper I dived into what those Hebrew and Aramaic words actually meant, the more I realized that I didn't believe them. The rituals felt home-like and familiar, but not believing, I ended up feeling more alienated, like there wasn't a way for me to be a Jew in the right way. So I just shut the door. It was also in college that I met Tim, who was different from me and my childhood people in so many ways, starting with the fact that he grew up Methodist in a small town in Iowa. When we fell in love and decided to get married, I knew I would not become a Christian and he would not be Jewish. And so I just figured that meant I would continue to live a life in which religion didn't play much of a part. But marrying him did mean that Christmas trees could become part of my life. Very early in our marriage, one of our cherished holiday traditions became going to a Christmas Eve service. We went to a variety of churches, including a couple Unitarian Universalist congregations, but mainly picked where we attended based on the time of their service and who had a reputation for having good music. One Christmas, early in our years in Philadelphia, we decided to attend the service at the UU Church in our neighborhood. The Unitarian Society of Germantown was and still is a beautiful traditional space with dark wood wainscoting and stained glass windows. That Christmas Eve, it was filled with candlelight and trimmed in greenery, and it looked, at least to this Jewish girl, like Christmas. And then the minister stood in the front of the sanctuary and wished everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a joyous Kwanzaa. I wasn't sure I had really heard what I thought I heard. Was I just wished Happy Hanukkah in a church on Christmas Eve? And then the choir sang a Hanukkah madrigal. I felt disbelief and amazement and belonging. After the service, I told Tim I wanted to go back to USG. I needed to see if what happened on Christmas Eve was real, or if that was just something that God added to the Christmas Eve service because it happened to be a year in which Christmas and Hanukkah fell together. I don't remember what Bill Gardner preached about that Sunday in 1988 when we first returned to USG. What I do remember is that the service reinforced my sense that this was someplace special, and that, like Kathleen Montgomery in our first reading, I had found home in Unitarian Universalism. This was a home where I could bring my whole self, my Jewishness and my not, my questioning and searching to understand what brought deep meaning to my life and to my place in the world. Unitarian Universalism's principles supported my search for truth and meaning within the context of community. Those scrappy, smart, satisfying people who cared passionately. The recognition that we are all part of an interdependent web reflected my long-held yet inchoate belief that there was something bigger beyond me that connected us all. Ironically, it was after joining a church that I began to feel like I could revisit some pieces of religious Judaism. Another minister at that congregation in Philadelphia, who, like me, had grown up in a Jewish family, preached a sermon during the Days of Awe in which she talked about fasting during Yom Kippur as a way of making room for what she needed to bring into her life in the coming year. That sermon helped me consider a way to understand what made this ritual meaningful to me, a non-observant Jew, beyond just connecting me with my family and my past. In contrast with my college Hillel experience, I didn't need to be a certain kind of Jew in order to embrace those experiences. And at the same time, I could continue to travel my spiritual path, explore ways of understanding the world and my place in it, what brought meaning to my life. That path has included being a participant in and later leading Cakes for the Queen of Heaven classes. And for those who don't know it, look back in UU history. It was a wonderful program. And exploring feminist and earth-centered spiritualities. I have found invitations to dive into places of deep stillness and meditative practices, including learning what Zen and other forms of Buddhism have to teach about living mindfully. The context of community within which I never needed to deny or give up pieces of myself, was essential in allowing me to deepen my understanding of myself and my spiritual identity. As Kara mentioned in the introduction, USG was the first of 5 UU congregations which Tim and I have joined. Career opportunities and a little bit of wanderlust took us first from Philadelphia to Southwest Virginia's New River Valley, then to Western New York, and 15 years ago, back to the Midwest and Iowa. Each time we have relocated, finding a Unitarian Universalist congregation has been an essential part of creating home in our new location. Truth be told, I don't think we would have ever seriously considered moving to any community where we didn't know there would be a UU congregation we could join. We have looked to these congregations as places where we might find friends as we settled into new communities. But more importantly, these were places we knew we would find people who shared our values and passions for liberal religion and social justice. As members of these congregations and this denomination, we are connected to thoughtful, challenging, and meaningful commitments to living into our call for social justice. In the Jewish tradition, one of the highest callings is to tikkun olam, repairing the world. Given the many ways in which our world is so sadly broken, being a part of a faith community which takes seriously that we have responsibilities to heal more than just ourselves matters profoundly. Here in Des Moines and across the country, we have shown up. We have marched for LGBTQ pride, for women's lives and reproductive freedom, for racial justice. We've opened our doors to shelter the unhoused, part of our congregational lives in Philly, Rochester, and now here, and to prepare a safe space for immigrants who, like my Eastern European grandparents, were seeking a safer and better life in this country. We've supported local and global change makers. And we've done this within a community of others on a path which is both shared and unique to each of us. We create, hold, and honor space for the differences as well as parallels of those paths. And true to our principles, in a way which allows me and each of us to continue my own seeking to understand that which makes life most meaningful. And this is why Unitarian Universalism matters to me, why this church matters to me, why it matters that we are here. Even in my relatively short time in this congregation, I witness and am privileged to be part of First Unitarian evolving, changing, growing as a community of kindred spirits on the path together. We are helping to heal the world through living out and into our mission to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, love radically. This happens through the changes around us and within our church walls. This past spring, the Celebrant team considered how we might best create meaningful space this summer and help lead our beloved community in this time of change. We know the year ahead with our soon-to-arrive interim minister, Meredith Garman, will be a time for us to engage together in a period of intentional reflection about who we are and who we are becoming. To help us prepare for this time of transition, the Celebrant team has asked a dozen of our members to share their stories and reflections on why Unitarian Universalism and this church matter to them. Our second reading was taken from a piece drafted by Victoria and the Celebrant team, which framed for our summer speakers how we are thinking about the summer and the work before us. We've asked them to reflect on questions including how they came to Unitarian Universalism, what beliefs are most core for them, how their belonging helps challenge and support them on their journeys, what is breaking their hearts and saving their lives in this moment. What are their hopes and dreams for our future? At the core, we've asked them to reflect on why it matters that this church exists. Our hope is that these stories and reflections will also help you consider what matters most to you about this church and our shared community. Forums after most week services this summer will create time and space to invite you into these conversations. I look forward to hearing the many stories, paths, and reflections that will be shared this summer. And in this season of transition to being on the path of growing, serving, and loving with this beloved community, our shared home. Our closing song is number 354 in the gray hymnal, We Laugh, We Cry.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel in freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. And in our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. A child is born among us, and we feel a special glow. We see time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We feel to hear imagination freely running wild. We dedicate our minds and hearts to the spirit of this child, and we believe
Our closing words come from the Reverend Richard S. Gilbert. Let us celebrate the common rituals that make us kin, the poignancy of welcome and farewell, the anguish of defeat, the tender touch of those who call us friend, the exuberant joy of birth, the empty space in our hearts when a loved one dies, the ultimate loneliness that each knows, the warm embrace of comrades who welcome us to the celebration of life. The questions that persist and perplex and do not yield to our need for answers. The shining moments when the sun slants across our dim, meandering path and illuminates the way. The strange and anxious excitement of moving on to new places to call home. Let us celebrate what we share. We are, after all, in this together.
Soul of truth, eternal goodness, sojourn with us as we part. Fill our minds with high endeavor. Keep us just and pure in heart. Strengthen us for daily duty. Guide us by the inward light. Hallowed be each coming morning. Calm and peaceful be each night.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace.